'Tis the season for... Oh. Black Mirror and the bizarre phrase, the Black Mirror Christmas special. White Christmas. Man, okay. Lot to deal with here. Reminder, in case you're new around these parts, there will be spoilers. That's why it's in the title. So, my perspective on this is going to be a little bit odd, because I'll remind folks that I started watching Black Mirror with season 4, and I watched the entirety of season 4 and then have now gone back. So there's things that I'm going to reference that I know fully well are actually calling back to this, but for me, because of my watch order, it feels like it's calling back the other way around. So I'll try and keep it straight in terms of what actually came out first, but if I screw it up, there's that. So structurally, it's not dissimilar to Black Museum. Actually, the framing device is a lot less blatant than Black Museum was. Black Museum was very much, here, walk through this space, and I'll tell you stories of these various pieces of technology. It was very blatantly a framing device, whereas this, it starts and it opens, it's like, huh, what's going on here? And then it flashes back for the first of what end up being 3 segments. And each of these segments gave me different feelings of unease. And I also knew that in the framing, so I knew something was wrong. I knew something was off and weird, and something was gonna drop in regards to all that. It took me a little while to figure out what it was, but I was expecting from the beginning that there's gonna be something up with this. So let's start taking these one at a time and then sort of overview the whole thing. So we start with the whole basically hookup coaching thing, which I was gonna say the ending didn't lose me, but in some ways was almost an overreach. But let me get there first. The whole thing of watching this guy, well, not just this guy, this group of guys, coach this awkward dude through trying to hook up with a girl, made me deeply uncomfortable. Which I think it's supposed to. Because, I mean, look, the whole hookup culture, the whole idea of pickup artists it's always been kind of skeevy, and it's feeling much more so now than it ever used to. And there's something about it, especially in this case, where I think even if someone's like, it's just guys being guys, you watch it in the context of this show and you still start to get that feeling of, oh, this is a bit much, as this guy's looking up also social media information, like these people's names and things about them. And, it makes you realize that the actual sort of culture of pickup artistry, for lack of a better term, would absolutely do that if they had the ability. So, that tapped into, that feeling of discomfort, unease, just tapped into that really well, and that sunk in. And it helps that the guy who's being coached is fairly likable. He just seems like an awkward guy who's trying to get help. So that keeps it from being what it could have been, which would have been just watching this skeevy, sleazy guy work his way through the situation, which would have been kind of insufferable. But it's not in this case. Now, the twist, it's fine. It works. It kind of came out of left field a little bit, I felt. I mean, not completely. There are hints to it, to where it's going, that are laid out before it actually gets there. But I don't know, the whole thing just felt a little too, well, to use the same comparison I used when I talked about Black Museum, a little too Tales from the Crypt, sort of, ironic fate thing. And I don't have a problem with ironic fates. They can be a lot of fun. Black Mirror, fun is not the word most people would use, but I don't know, it just seemed, it didn't seem quite like what I would come to expect from Black Mirror. Again, though, I'm now sort of realizing that this is kind of a side thing that the show does every now and then, going for a bit more of the outright, ironic fate thing. Usually with these shorter ones, because like I said, the first time I noticed something like this was Black Museum. So I think it's something they kind of keep in reserve for their stories that are shorter, that they're just trying to wrap up in a shorter time frame, and they don't have the time for the character beats and to let the things breathe the way that they normally do. But that was good. Put me in a state of unease. And so then next up, we get what is, in many ways, it's a combination of two things, or more accurately, there's two concepts in here that would later get split and sort of isolated as their own thing later on in season 4. So we've got this whole thing, the whole cookie concept, which in terms of the ideas that later get branched off of, the whole idea of a copy of somebody, as somebody's consciousness, their memories and their understanding, that is just code, but feels like it's the real person. That obviously got explored later on so now I suppose I have to warn about spoilers for season 4 as well, to a certain extent. Sorry. So that gets explored later on in USS Callister. And then the whole sort of being trapped inside this, being consciousness trapped inside this thing, and, being on the inside looking out, that got revisited in one of the Black Museum segments later on. But this isn't just a culmination of those two ideas, because it adds the extra thing of this kind of almost being the next generation of like Alexa or Siri, or any sort of AI assistant. What's the next level from a learning, theoretically, there's the things you can talk to. That's what we have now. Next step from that would be a learning piece of software that gets to know you better the more it interacts with you. But what's even better than that? Software that already knows you completely well down to the letter, because it effectively is you. And that's actually kind of a cool idea in a lot of ways, but the way in which that has to be done, the way in which you bring the AI construct in line is awful. It is really terrible and terrifying. Like the concept of literally being able to do nothing for weeks or months or years. That's really kind of terrifying to sit down and think about for any extended period of time. And this also introduces the whole block element, but we're gonna get back to that a little bit later. Oh yeah, that didn't really get introduced there. It got introduced in the previous segment. I'm getting my bits mixed up. I'm a little bit tired and I'm emotionally drained, so you'll have to bear with me here. So then finally we get, after hearing basically 2 segments narrated by John Hamm, we now get the last story narrated by this other guy, and we get the story of him and this woman that he had a very close relationship with but didn't work out. And they got in a fight, and she blocked him. And this sort of extrapolation of the block button on basically any social media app, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's anything else, you literally block someone from your life. And I feel like in some ways Archangel revisited that to a certain extent. Like, just because you can't see it and don't have to deal with it doesn't mean it's not there. So the whole idea, that whole concept went some interesting places. Like, I found it interesting that, or at least some of my takeaways from it, because I do find that with Black Mirror, sometimes what I read into a situation is not what other people read into it, which is always fun to find out. But sort of my takeaways from that is the ease with which we can just block somebody on social media. If we were able to do that in life and have it be that easy, that's again may potentially kind of awful, because is it a good thing to be able to cut a real person out of your real life, not just your digital existence, but your real life, that easily? And, you know, I can't say it's wrong to be able to do that if the technology exists, because I can think of plenty of situations where that would be a very good thing to do. But aside from that, certainly the way this presents it, like, I really think about the consequences of that and the severity of being cut off. And I'm not gonna lie, I really felt for this guy when that daughter turned around. I knew there was gonna be something about that. They were holding off on showing her face. Oh, before I get there though, this last segment is shot gorgeously. All the stuff that goes on in the snow, it almost looks black and white, but then we get these pops of really vibrant color. So all that is really fantastic. And you've got this guy, and you know this daughter that he's watching from a distance, or trying to, because he's blocked from being able to see her just as much as with her mother. But when her mother dies in an accident, the block gets lifted automatically. And when he sees her face and sees instantly that it's not his daughter, I really did feel for the guy. And not because of, oh my God, she cheated on him, because the show did the correct thing in terms of addressing the impact on him. Because for him, as far as he was concerned, his daughter just died. Of course, the reality is he didn't even have a daughter, but he thought that she was pregnant with his kid. He observed as best as he was able to with the block this kid grow up over, she looked about four years or so, and living with that, like, I'm a father. I'm not part of her life, but I'm a father. And finding out that was not true for him feels like his daughter just died, was just killed. And I even though I knew it was gonna go bad, and I had a very paranoid feeling about how bad it was gonna get, which would turn out to be correct, but I did feel for him when he's in that kitchen just going, where's my daughter? And the pain of that. But then, of course, and I started to get an inclination of not the specifics of what was going on, but where things were going to end up. Basically, as soon as he got into that kitchen, when he followed the kid inside and he got in that kitchen, I recognized it. Boom. I mean, they've got the zeroing in on the clock, and he reiterates that in case anybody missed it. But as soon as he walked in the kitchen, I'm like, oh, God, that's where he and John Hamm are. And I didn't make the leap in my head that it was a simulation or anything like that, but I am watching that going, he's there. They mentioned at the start of this passage of a significant amount of time. The grandfather is not there. The young girl does not appear to be there. This is going to go really, really, really badly. And it's awful. It's just awful. The guy leaving, and this little girl up in her room alone with no one to take care of her, and trying to leave and go get help. And she leaves a present for her grandfather, who's leaning against the wall dead, and she goes out into the storm. And oh yeah, that was hard for me. That was really hard, which shouldn't come as a shock for anyone who's been following me talking about Black Mirror, because I've brought up repeatedly how endangered children are tough for me, and especially if it's more than endangered. Yeah. So, and I think it was a very smart idea to not have this kid ever speak at any point, because I think giving the kid too much personality honestly would have killed it, because it's really hard to get a convincing performance out of a kid that young, out of an actor that young. So by not having her speak at all, I still felt like I got this kid. And God, that one shot of her laying on the floor of her bedroom, and probably been there for a couple of days by that point. Oh man. And so then we get our big twist. It's kind of a confessional thing, and John Hamm is awful. I mean, we knew that already from what we saw, but he just steps out, and basically the world is blocked for him. He can go out and he can walk and he can be in the world, but he can't interact with anybody. And that's sort of that's existentially scary after a much more visceral gut punch of that third segment. And again, it's the combination of, I feel the father's pain for feeling like he lost a daughter that he was convinced he had, and then what actually happens to the kid. Oh God. Yeah. I'm exhausted. I'm drained. I am emotionally beat. And I think I just need to crawl in bed and hope I don't have really, really depressing or screwed up dreams after watching this particular one. It's good. It's really good. It's very affecting. John Hamm is good in it. He's charming as he always is, and that's good for somebody this skeezy, because otherwise you're just kind of like, ugh, why am I dealing with this guy? So it helps that he's charming and he's inherently likable. So he was good. The other guy was good. Whole thing, yeah, that worked really well. And it's interesting seeing how some of these things are concepts or forward moved technology that get reused again, and in either newer ways or ways with a more specific focus than this episode had. So I think that's it. There were probably other things that I wanted to say or meant to say, but like I said, I'm just beat at this point. And I debated doing this in the morning, but I feel like I needed to talk about this while the emotions were still raw, because just damn, Black Mirror, why can't I quit you? So, Black Mirror White Christmas. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts were, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all that stuff that you can do. Support me on Patreon, buy a t-shirt, follow me on Twitter, listen to my podcast. Links for all that and more is down in the description. So until next time, and hopefully a good night's sleep, this council is adjourned.